On to Toolbox time. My name is Kristen Jordan Koenig, and I am a GIS specialist with the Kansas Data Access and Support Center, otherwise known as DASC. My contact info is provided, and this video is in conjunction with the Kansas NG9-1-1 GIS training program, mainly focusing on the Kansas NG9-1-1 Toolbox. And today, as fair notice, I'm recording this at home whilst dog sitting these three guys, Cubby, Rocky, and Sherman. And while I think they're very good dogs, I can't promise they are going to be saints while I'm recording this. So I apologize in advance if they decide that the trash man is the devil or the doorbell rings or whatever else. Today we're going to be talking about converting the 2.0 geodatabases to the 2.1 new template. And there are a few initial preparation steps to get everything ready to start running the conversion tools. First and foremost, please download the most recent copy of the toolbox, and hopefully you know where to access that. Otherwise, we'll be sending out an email with the link to download the new one here pretty soon. After you download that, I'd like to point you to the doc folder inside and getting the converting 2.0 to 2.1 directions. So to kind of show you where that is, I'm sure you're familiar with the, hang on, let me back up, the innards of the toolbox. And usually from ArcCatalog or ArcMap, you're just looking at the toolbox itself. But there's also additional functionality inside, especially in the doc folder. So in here, we're going to be looking at the converting GDB 2.0 to 2.1 document. In here, it's going to have written instructions for everything, also some notes that are good to know. And if at this point in time you want to pause me, get the new toolbox downloaded, and either print off a copy of this document to take notes on, or if you just want to open it up and take your own digital notes and save it, that is completely fine. That's a great option to maximize your training experience. So then the next step is also going to be downloading the template for your county, the 2.1 geodatabase template. And there's two versions of it, one in Kansas State Plain North, one in Kansas State Plain South. And if you're not sure what your county's in, there's a link to a guide in the documentation that I just showed. So you can always check that out to see if you need to be in North or South. So what's new in the 2.1 geodatabase? Very briefly, in the road centerline feature class, we've added 4 new fields: auth-L, auth-R, geomseg-R, and geomseg-L. The auth fields are going to identify if your PSAP has authority on that particular side of the road, and it's going to be a yes or no value. And for the geomseg fields, it's going to indicate if that particular side of the road should be a geomseg record. And this is all for call routing purposes. Again, that's going to be a yes/no field. In the address points, there are 3 new fields: RCL match for road centerline match, and RCL side, road centerline side, and then geomseg. RCL match and RCL side are going to contain, respectively, the NG-seg ID of the road centerline that address point matches into, and then RCL side is going to contain a left, right, or no match value for what side of the road the address point is actually on, or at least where it compares to. And then the geomseg field is going to indicate if that particular address point should be added as a geomseg record, and that will also be a yes or no value. Even though it's feeling like we're adding a lot of fields, it does not equal more work. These fields are, generally speaking, auto-managed, and going through the conversion process, you're going to auto-populate all of these fields. And they do have validation parameters that are validated in 2.1. It adds a few seconds to the validation time, but this is going to make so many things easier on down the road. It's well worth our time to do the conversion and do it properly with the new fields. It's going to make the whole NG9-1-1 experience much easier for everyone. In terms of the timeline of when you have to have your geodatabase converted by, it has to be done by the end of June 2018 or sooner potentially if you meet special requirements. And if you are curious about that, please get in contact with Sherry Massey. This has to do with when certain PSAPs are switching over to other things. I'm not positive of that. I just write the code. So you may have noticed in the Toolbox download that there are now 2 toolboxes. Just due to how Esri versioned things, we had to do this for compatibility purposes. So if you are still on 10.3 or 10.3.1, use the Toolbox version that has 10.3 at the end of it. But if you're on 10.4, 10.4.1, 10.5, 10.5.1, any of those, just use the same toolbox name that you've always used. Both toolbox interfaces are using the exact same scripts. We just had to have a different toolbox set up based on the version. So there's no difference behind the scenes of what's happening. Also, unfortunately, the conversion scripts are not compatible with Arc Pro because Arc Pro does not support metadata conversion tools. And I don't know what Esri's timeline is on that. So unfortunately, if you are a pro user, you're going to have to switch back to desktop simply for the 2.0 to 2.1 conversion process. So to prepare your data for conversion, run your 2.0 geodatabase through the number 9 optional check all required out of the new toolbox download. There's a few new or slightly tweaked tests that are going to provide slightly different results than you've probably seen before. We've gone over what those were in the NG9-1-1 user group, so hopefully you'll be aware of what those are. And it's important to clean up any data possible at the 2.0 stage. Clean data is going to make your conversion much better and much more accurate. So fix any issues, keep running it through the validation tool until it's as clean as you can make it. And then at that point, make a copy of your 2.0 geodatabase just in case. Better safe than sorry. And make a copy then of the 2.1 geodatabase template so that you are basically inserting your data into a copy of the template. Again, if anything goes goofy during the conversion process, it's just better to do all this processing on a copy of the data instead of the root. So, to show an example of what we're talking about, we're going to be doing an example conversion on the Clark County Geodatabase. And I ran their 2.0 geodatabase through the number 9 optional check all tool. And here are the results of that, the field values check results table. And as you can probably see, some of these notices and errors are going to look a little bit different than what you've seen before. Due to the new emphasis on GeoMSAG, right now it's going to start checking to see if the MSAG fields have leading or trailing spaces, or if they're null or blank. And so you can see in this case, all 4 of these actually point to one record that is a blank MSAG co-R field. And so if this was your data and you're seeing that, just check out what record that is, insert a value into the MSAG co respective field, and that should take care of it. If it is identifying that you have a leading or trailing space and there is a value, under adjustment tools, there is now a fix MSEG spaces tool that you can run that'll strip all the spaces leading or trailing out of the MSEG fields. There's another one for fix submit. This will populate any blank submit records with a Y. It's going to be stricter about if submit is actually yes or no. So if you want to fix submits in your entire geodatabase, just run the geodatabase through the fix submit tool. You just plop your geodatabase in there, run it, and it's going to populate all blank or null submit field entries with Y. Okay, so that's a brief overview. So this is the copy I created of the Clark County 2.0 geodatabase, and then I made a blank copy of the 2.1 geodatabase and renamed it appropriately. So to start off the conversion process, under the conversion tool set, you can see in here that we've got the tools numbered. These are so that you can just run them in numerical order. No confusion as to what the step is next. Go from 1 to 2 to 3, etc. So we're going to start with number 1 and put our 2.0 geodatabase in the first slot and the target 2.1 geodatabase in the second slot, and hit go. So as that is processing, we're going to jump back and go over what the conversion process is actually doing. It is migrating all of the data that are in required feature classes and tables, and it will also copy over any user added fields that are in those required feature classes and tables. Some PSAPs have added additional fields for their own purposes, and that's completely fine. The conversion process will copy those over. It is also copying over any metadata that you have in your 2.0 geodatabase into the 2.1 geodatabase. And something new with this particular conversion process, it will adjust the topology if you have split ESB layers. The geodatabase template topology comes set up for a single ESB layer, but a lot of PSAPs have separate ones for EMS law and fire. And so the conversion script will automatically take care of those topology rules for you. The only exception is if you have a layer that is just named ESB that has data, and you also have split ESB layers for fire, EMS, and law. So if that's the case, the topology will not automatically adjust. You're going to have to do something with that ESB layer. If it's actually the PSAP layer, rename it ESB_PSAP, or if it's just kind of out there as a random filler, just delete it, and then that way the tool will automatically take care of all the topology rules for you, so you don't have to do that. And a little discussion of what the conversion process won't do. It will not copy additional tables and feature classes that you have added. So some people have put in additional tables or feature classes for their own purposes in the geodatabase, and the conversion process will not copy those over. So you'll have to do that manually. It will not add additional metadata if you don't have any, with the exception of some basic geodatabase level metadata that exists in 2.1. And it also will not change the information for the last date that data was edited, like in that last update and update by field that's involved with the editor tracking. So it's turning off editor tracking for the conversion process. And then after the conversion's done, it turns editor tracking back on. So that way, it's not going to record that every single record was edited, and it'll maintain the last time you actually made, real edits to that particular data record. So let's see how the conversion is going. I don't see where my art catalog disappeared to, so we'll have to do this. taking a little bit to refresh, but hopefully this will give you the chance to see some of the feedback that the tool interface provides. One important thing, oh good, it just finished. One important thing, pretty much everybody is going to get this notice that the county boundary doesn't exist. The county boundary layer is not included in the 2.1 Geodatabase template, so you don't have to worry about it being copied over. If it doesn't copy over, if it's giving you this message, don't worry about it, and that'll be fine. So looking through, it looks like everything else converted nicely. So now's a good time just to do a basic check to make sure everything copied over right. And how I typically do that, just do a visual scan. Yep, that more or less looks like my data. Inside the table, a good way is to take this feature count number, and it looks like in the 2.1 Geodatabase, we've got 1,510 address points. And in the 2.0 Geodatabase, we have the same number of features. So that's a good, sort of general check to make sure that things copied over. And also to show you, in the 2.1 Geodatabase, all the way at the end, you can see that we have the RCL match, GeoMSEG, and RCL side fields in the address points. And then in the road center line, at the very back, we've got our new fields of the auth and GeoMSEG fields. So even though the data conversion process is done, we still have some additional steps to get those fields filled in with the correct information. Before we jump into that, if you do have additional fields and tables that you want to copy over from 2.0 to 2.1, you can honestly do it anytime. This is good a time of any, so your geodatabase looks like something that you're really familiar with. And also, there's a new feature data set here for the optional layers. So if you have stuff like bridges, parcels, gates, utilities, those are going to be imported over here. So just slightly different organizational format, but it's all there. So to get rolling, the first thing you're going to populate is the authx fields in the road center line. And this, we've tried to make it pretty straightforward. All you do is drop the geodatabase in the tool and run it. It generally doesn't take terribly long. For the auth test, the basic premise is it's going off the county right and left fields, and if the county is not your county, it's questioning that you have authority in that particular road segment. So we'll take a look at that. In your version of the tool, this is only going to fill in the Ys for where your county has jurisdiction. As you can see here, there are a few no's filled in. I just did that for my own scripting purposes. But typically, when you run this, it will only fill in the yeses, and then you're going to have to fill in the no's manually just to completely verify that, in fact, you do not have jurisdiction or authority on that side of the road, things like that. So if you've got questions about if you do or don't have authority, or this depends on the day and what the cop is wearing or whatever else, please direct those to Sherry Massey. She has all the whys. I just write the tools. So please forward all questions about data attributes to Sherry, and she'll be able to help you out with that. So now that the auth fields are populated, we can move on to populating the GeoMSEG fields. And there's a variety of criteria that are outlined in the documentation of, what it's actually doing behind the scenes, of what indicates if something should be a GeoMSEG or not. So there's a few different other situations, and again, after this tool runs, you should manually check You know, if you know you have certain weird areas where it should not convert a particular road into a GeoMSEG field, then you can indicate that appropriately. Okay, so this finished up, and next up we have the populate address RCL match. This is also going to populate the RCL side field. As a heads up, this one can take a little bit of time to run, so especially if you're in a larger county, I would recommend setting this before you go on your lunch break, or if you're in a really big county, set it before you leave for work for the day and then just pick it up the next morning. I think for Clark County it takes about 4 minutes, and they've got 1,500 address points, so you know, you can probably extrapolate what the estimated time for your county would be. So if you're really interested in how this tool works, I put a fair amount in the documentation about what fields it's looking at, how it is comparing the address points to the road center line, exactly which fields in both are used for comparison, just so that, you know, if you do have questions about the matching process, that information is available. But as always, if you do have questions about what's going on, certainly let me know. And that's something that we can get addressed. I'm going to go ahead and put this on pause until the tool's done running, and then we'll pick it back up. Okay, we'll get this back up and running, and the tool is almost done. Oh, it is done. So what it's doing behind the scenes is running what has always been known as the GeoCompare address points. So if you've been running that tool and editing your data accordingly, you should be in really good shape. So it looks like the Clark County data maintainer has done that, and all of the address points match. So let's see, we can take a look. It is still creating the address point results as it always has. So you can see, though, now it's been added that the RCL side and other various things are in here. But the key is this match field that, you know, it has M for match, T for tie, and U for unmatched. So you can always go back and look at that resource for unmatched records to take a look at specifically what was unmatched. How it's going to look in the address point file is, zoom to the end, the RCL match field is going to have the NG-SEG ID of where the address point falls. And then in the RCL side, it's going to be right, left, or no match, according to how that ended up after the analysis. Let's see. So this tool, populate address RCL match, it only runs on blank records to save time. So if you need to make edits to any unmatched records, you can, and then just rerun the tool, and it'll only run the analysis on blank or null records. So if something already has a value in it, it just skips it on RCL match. So after you've run through this as many times as you needed to pick up as many matched records as possible, this next tool auto adds any no match records, which we don't have in Clark County, but I'll show you that anyways. Okay, and finally, the last tool that we have in the conversion process is the populate address GeoMSEG. And basically, if the if the RCL match is a true NG-SEG ID, excuse me, the GeoMSEG is going to be no. But if RCL match ends up being no match, then the GeoMSEG is calculated as yes, because for that address point, it doesn't fit inside a road center line, and so it should have its own GeoMSEG for call purposes. So this tool runs pretty quickly. It's just doing an autofill on there. So at this point in time, review manually any records that you know are in weird areas, just to make sure that these new indicator attributes are reflecting the situation correctly. It's really going to help out with various things on down the NG9-1-1 line if this information is populated correctly. So then, as a final step, you can rerun the 2.1 geodatabase through the optional or through the number 9 check all required, just to make sure that everything's nice and clean. And I won't make you sit and watch this whole thing, but if/when you run into issues doing the conversion, please just shoot me an email. My contact info is in the documentation. But when you do that, please include a screenshot of the error message and also a zipped copy of your geodatabase. And that way, it's what I'd be asking you for anyways. So go ahead and let me know what's going on and send me your data so I can take a look at it over here. So again, if you have any questions about the tools, feel free to contact me. If you have any questions about the actual data itself, please send those to Sherry Massey. I would have to forward those to Sherry Massey anyways, so it's just better to do a direct communication on that so you can get a straight answer of what's going on. I think that's about it. We'll just let Clark County run itself out through what it's doing. But otherwise, if you have any questions, let me know. And this has been another episode of Toolbox Time.